Welcome to Veronica Live, and we've got a big hour ahead of us here. We've got my wingman, John Salick, and he's becoming a regular. I love this. Representative Dr. Joel Rudman is back. He represents District 3 in the Panhandle. I call that Gates Country. Welcome back, Representative Dr. Rudman. You've got like too many titles.
Veronica, hey, just call me Doc. That's fine. And hey, it's an honor to be back. I enjoy talking to you guys.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, and I know the hottest thing, and I've got steam coming out of my ears, and it is regarding Amendment 3, which is the pot amendment. And hot out of my mailbox, Doc, is one of those lovely vote yes on 3 this November and join President Trump on this. So it's got his picture holding his hand up, and it says, I'll be voting yes on Amendment 3 in November. And that is the marijuana pot amendment. And we don't want this. So I know that was one of the things you wanted to chat about. And so I am fuming over here. So somebody throw some ice my way.
Well, Veronica, as a physician, we can take this in any direction you want to, but you're 100% right. From my perspective, this is the last thing Florida needs. And I'm going to try and read the president's mind here for a second, because you understand it is a little bit of a quandary, right? Most of us Republicans, yes, we believe in the freedom of the individual. So I'm sure when the president's looking at that initiative, he's thinking, well, I don't want to tell people what to do, and I certainly understand that. But as a physician, I think what the pro-Amendment 3 people aren't taking into consideration is the fact that marijuana, okay, it's a natural substance, but so is digitalis, so is heart medicine, so is cocaine, So just because something's natural does not mean that it's not also a potentially harmful medication. And so while I'm as much a libertarian as anybody, I want to let people live their lives and pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There is a limit. There is a breaking point when people are doing things that are unhealthy and people are doing things that are just going to lead to downfall. And certainly as a physician, that's what we see when we talk about controlled substances. Like, for example, I'm sure we all know someone who's on a benzodiazepine. As a physician, I write these anxiety medicines probably every day. I probably write one prescription a day for either Valium or Xanax. And even though that's a legitimate medication with a legitimate purpose, I certainly wouldn't, go out and do a public service announcement extolling the virtues of Valium. In other words, there are people out there that need Valium, and that's okay. But for those of us that don't need it, hey, don't put it out there like it's this great thing. And I'm afraid the marijuana patients and the marijuana users, I'm afraid they're falling into the same trap, Veronica, because, yes, I do have patients with severe illnesses and really just debilitating diagnoses, things like chronic pain, things like cancer, where they have access to medicinal marijuana, and that's okay. But I promise you, not a single one of those cancer patients, not a single one of those intractable seizure patients would say, oh, yeah, this stuff is great. I would recommend it for everybody. And again, that's the difference. It's not that we want to outlaw it or keep it away from people. I think there are legitimate purposes for marijuana, but that's in a controlled setting under supervision of a physician. And like I said, Amendment 3 is just the wrong way to go on this. And for those of you out there that are pointing to President Trump and using that as your excuse or using that as your example, well, President Trump's for it. Let me ask you this, Veronica. You know as well as I do, does he recommend it for his children? And the answer is heck no.
Well,
matter of fact, the Trump family, they are so proud of being drug free in that.
Yeah,
family.
no, and that's why they're all successful. Because I want you to talk about why it is, because I think it's a gateway drug. But on this postcard, and this I do agree with. He wants to end needless arrests and incarcerations of adults for small amounts of marijuana for personal use. And I've said this recently, and later today I actually have the director coming on for the vote no on 3 this amendment. She's coming on the show. So I've said it before. Let's fine the hell out of people, But I was thinking about it because yesterday I went to an event and I was leaving, and there was another dispensary, and two old people came out of it, hobbling out, and I think I can count 6 now here in my county, Doc. So people are getting pot already, and I think it's a gateway drug, honestly. And I don't want to have to smell it everywhere. And I'm like, I wanted you to tell us, is it a gateway drug? And then I'm disappointed. I literally was in shock that Senator Joe Gruters supported this. And I've asked Chairman Evan Power to talk about it. I asked Representative Griff Griffiths to talk about it because it was shocking to me. He was beloved. And this is really bothering me that he's supporting this amendment. So talk about the gateway first, and then about Senator Grutter pushing this.
Well, and again, you're absolutely correct. Of course, it's a gateway drug. A person doesn't just do one drug and that's it. One leads to another. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's like saying, I only listen to Slayer, but I don't listen to Megadeth or Metallica. Look, if you listen to one thrash metal band, you're going to listen to more than one. And it's the same with drugs, right? You're either a drug user or you're not. And that's where people draw the line. They don't draw the line at marijuana. They draw the line at controlled substances or not. And marijuana is certainly a controlled substance, and it is certainly a gateway drug. And we have a multitude of examples of that in my practice where I see these poor, unfortunate, most of them are teens or patients in their 20s who start off with a little marijuana and then they move on to heavier stuff. And even for those patients, Veronica, that don't move on to heavier substances, I have plenty of patients who are just addicted to marijuana, and you can tell them with almost 100% accuracy, Veronica, I can spot these patients. They'll come in, usually, again, they're young people in their early 20s. They'll come in with a complaint of anxiety, and during the course of the interview and the examination, you just notice, Veronica, that, wow, these kids are really climbing the walls here. They're really way more anxious than what they should be based on their story. What the heck is going on? So when I see that, I always drug test them in the office. First of all, okay. I ask them, I say, hey, look, I'm going to drug test you. Why don't you just go ahead and tell me what you're on? And most of them will cop to using marijuana. And they don't just use it here and there. They use it chronically. They use it every single day. And those are typically the patients I see that are really in a deep hole. Like I said, maybe they had some anxiety originally when they first started using, but now that anxiety is way out of control. It's usually coupled with some paranoia by the time I see them. So in other words, they almost have psychotic tendencies, and that's from the chronic marijuana use. Now, in regards to Senator Gruters, again, I think it's probably a personal decision where, again, Senator Gruters, he's a great freedom fighter like myself. He probably saw that as more of a freedom and liberty issue. Again, we all have that libertarian streak in us. So I don't fault him for choosing what he chose. Again, he's probably looking at it from a freedom perspective that he doesn't want to tell others how to live their lives. But unfortunately, we control where people smoke. We control how much alcohol people drink. We don't let people drink a 12-pack and then get behind the wheel of their automobile. And I sure don't want somebody stoned. I sure don't want somebody high as a kite. Number one, passing legislation on the House floor. Number two, operating the school bus that my kids are on. And number three, flying my airplane that I happen to be flying on. So again, there is a limit to these things. And I think maybe it's that perspective as a physician that allows me to say, hey, look, I'm a freedom fighter as much as anybody, but here's where I draw the line, and that's on this illicit drug use.
Doctor, you just hit the nail on the head on the psychosis. And there's also the brain development aspect of teenagers that it's proven, it's not my opinion, it's a proven fact that using marijuana affects brain development in young people. And that's being completely discounted in this entire thing. And it's like, are we going to raise a generation of stoners that are just, walking around, or driving, as you pointed out? We have this thing about, mothers against drunk driving and stuff. And now we're going to start seeing all these people that are high out driving around, or as you point out, flying your airplane or whatever. And is that the new normal now?
Well, and unfortunately, guys, it's we've gotten so far from what made this country great, and I propose to you that these amendments are done on purpose, ladies and gentlemen. These amendments 3 and 4 that we're specifically talking about here today, these amendments basically summarize the degradation of our society as a whole. I mean, if you need further examples of how far we've fallen as a great Western society, just look at amendments 3 and 4, because I'm probably the same age as you guys, maybe a little bit older. I'm a child of the 80s. I went to school where we would turn on the television and it was Just Say No. I actually had a patient come in the other day who wore one of the old T-shirts. I have no idea where he got it from, probably from some thrift store, but he wore the T-shirt. Remember the DARE commercials? D-A-R-E, DARE to keep kids off drugs. And I'm like, where did you get that shirt? That is awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the kind of work ethic. That's the kind of moral fiber that made this country great, because we didn't have time to sit around and get high. We didn't idolize people who got high. As a matter of fact, Veronica, I don't know if your followers know who I am, or I don't know if they're on social media, but if they would go to my Twitter page, it's Doc Rudman or something like that. If they look me up on Twitter, I actually posted a tweet this morning about Amendment 3. And basically, in a nutshell, I said, look, y'all know I'm a big rock fan. I'm a big heavy metal guy. I said, look, my idols are people like Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, and it just so happens that they never took a drug in their life. I said, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, all these other stars that people looked up to, where are they now? They're all dead. And why are they dead? Because they were drug users. And again, you really don't have to look any further than the band Kiss. Kiss was this great band with 4 members. 2 of them did drugs, 2 of them didn't. The only 2 that are surviving, that are thriving, that are multimillionaires are the 2 that did not partake in drug use. The other 2 guys were undependable. I mean, Ace Frehley, he's still out there touring, but for the people that go to his concerts, they say, man, he can't even string 2 words together. His playing is sloppy. He's just he's regressed from where he was in the 70s, whereas, everybody else continues to evolve and move forward. And that's what drug use does to the brain. As John was saying, drug use does not make you a better person. It makes you less of who you are. And it's a shame because, we all know friends, we all know colleagues that partake. And as for me, myself, I have people that I know that unfortunately use, and these are brilliant people, and you wonder how much more brilliant would they be if they weren't under the chains of this drug. And
doesn't it hurt your memory issues? Because I've met a few people, like they can't remember anything because they've done so much of this. And then you shared this on your ex, actually, and I was upset when I saw this. It was the president of Barstool Sports posting about how he wants to smoke, eat his pizza and have his beer and smoke his pot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that guy. I don't like him now.
I actually called him a loser because I was so mad that, again, guys, look, I'm a libertarian as much as anyone. I'm very much a live and let live kind of representative. But again, we all have skeletons in our closets. We all have things that should be kept private. To me, hey, if that guy, what's his name, Portnoy, if that's how he lives his life, hey, more power to you, brother, but keep that kind of stuff to yourself.
Well, he had 23 million views, Doc, that watched this damn video. And I know all these youth, that want to go work for him. He's such a great guy. And I'm like, do you want to work for a pothead? No.
Well, see, that's the thing. You do what you want in your bedroom, do what you want in your own private life. But once you go public, once you put that kind of stuff on social media, you now have a responsibility to your kids, to other people's kids, to your community. And that's definitely not, again, look, do I go to McGuire's in Pensacola every couple months, and do I enjoy a few strawberry daiquiris? Of course I do, a few margaritas. But would I post a video of myself while I'm hammered at McGuire's? No, I wouldn't, because that would be irresponsible. So, So poor boy can do what he wants, but the minute he gets on there and starts extolling the virtues of that, yeah, that is absolutely the wrong message. And again, I relate it to my patients. When I give this little old lady today Valium, I hope she's not going on social media telling everybody, boy, this Valium is a great drug.
Okay, Doc, I've said this. The selection cycle's killing me. I've never done a Xanax or Valium, but I might need some Xanax to make it the next 50 days. It's been rough.
Well, see, and that's okay. Just don't publicize it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doc, I wanted to.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you. I one of my rules, rule number one in politics, if you want to know the truth, follow the money. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Joe Gruters was with the CEO of TrueLeave, who is spending $74 million, if I remember correctly.
Well, she spent 75 as of this morning.
$75 million on this campaign to get this approved. Does the state going to benefit from this as far as money coming in?
Let me add on to that before Doc answers, because when I was researching for our next guest that's coming on today, it says that the CEO was bragging that Florida is going to be a $6 billion pot market.
Wow.
And that's
wow. Follow the money.
I'm like, what the hell? So $75 million, that's like $20 to them.
And I'm sure we're going to get lots of taxes off of this, for the state.
Are we going to put people through college?
And I've got a newsflash for you guys. This whole idea, I saw that the senator had a proposal. Well, hey, when this does pass, we'll make it where people can't smoke outside. That way you guys won't smell.
Yes.
Listen, I've been there, done that. A couple months ago, I was in Vancouver up in Canada, and you can't walk down the street without just wanting to vomit from the smell of marijuana and THC everywhere. And you know what? Every building in Vancouver has that little plaque outside on the stone wall saying, no smoking within 500 feet of this entrance. Well, guess what, guys? No one's going to enforce that. Cops have better things to do than walk around with their drug sniffing dog wondering who's smoking pot. So these ideas that they're somehow going to temporize it, or they're somehow going to mitigate it so that the rest of us don't know what's going on. Yeah, in your dreams, that's never going to happen. So if you don't want Florida to become a hellhole, if you don't want Florida to reek of marijuana smell every street corner you go to, there's only one clear way to prevent that, and that's to vote no on Amendment 3. That's the only way you're going to keep Florida clean and keep Florida safe.
Doc, one of the things that I had heard, and this was from another doctor, that a lot of the marijuana, the current medical marijuana dispensing, a lot of it is edibles. Not so much the smoking, but the edibles are very popular. Is that as bad or worse? As far as the delivery method goes, I don't know what the concentrations are. Because when you eat it, you get the whole thing, as opposed to smoking it, where you get whatever percentage transfers in your lungs.
You're definitely right. There's a big edible market, and then the other thing that I think you're alluding to here, John, is the fact that we do have a medical marijuana market here in the state of Florida. So it's not difficult to get medical marijuana.
At least
let's
six,
say I do
Doc, at least 6 dispensaries, and they all look lovely, I have to tell you. So people are getting pot. They're getting it.
Definitely, Veronica. And like I said, if there is a reason to get it, you can get it without this amendment.
And I'm pro that. I'm pro if you're suffering. I'm a breast cancer survivor. If somebody's aching and can't, meds aren't doing it for them, I'm fine with that. But this letting teenagers and young adults smoke and fry their brains, I have a problem with that.
Well, and y'all were asking about priorities. Y'all were asking about why people vote the way they vote, or why people back an amendment or don't back an amendment. Well, one proposal I had, guys, see what you think about this. So y'all were asking, follow the money, or why are they in favor of it? Well, maybe some of them are in favor of it because maybe some of them are users themselves. So to my way of thinking, we serve at y'all's behest, right? I mean, we're public servants. So if Amendment 3 passes, I will file legislation to make certain that there's not a single state legislator that's under the influence while we're in session, right? Because you wouldn't want people passing legislation. You wouldn't want people voting on things that will impact your lives forevermore if they're high as a kite. So my promise to you is that if Amendment 3 passes, you will see legislation being filed from my desk that will expose the exposers. In other words, we will urine drug test every state legislator. And so we'll connect some of the dots with those urine drug tests. Oh, you were in favor of this. And, oh, look whose drug test is positive. Wow, now we see why you were in favor of it. So, again, we're gonna try and expose some of those.
You're going to make some enemies on that one,
I say,
Doc. I was
you can do
impressed
that.
when I read that. I was like, you get him, Doc. Oh, LFG. I'm right behind you. I'm going to have the LFG Doc shirt going.
I was say from some of the Republican events I've been to, the legislatures imbibe in the alcohol rather heavily.
John, that's okay, as long as you get an Uber.
Well, I made a joke the other night at a Republican event. I said, although with some of the legislation we've passed, in years past, you may have thought people were high as a kite based on the legislation that made it through. So, but like I said, my promise to you is that we're going to start connecting the dots. I can't understand why every single Republican is not against this amendment. Again, it boils down to public safety.
Well, we know the governor's office is, because I follow Christina Pushwa, which I've got to track her down. I need to get her on my show. And she, every single day, is pushing Amendment 3 and Amendment 4. So, but wow, I just, that making all the legislators drug test, I'm fine with that. I'm a military woman. People have watched me pee for 20 years in a cup.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and again, but I would tell voters, I'd say, look to the people you idolize. Look to the people that you wish you could live like. I don't do drugs. Paul Stanley does not do drugs. Ron DeSantis does not do drugs. Donald J. Trump does not do drugs.
He doesn't even do a drink. He doesn't even have a drink because his brother died from it, alcoholism.
Exactly. So it's almost like you need to copy your. They may say, "Oh, you do whatever you want to do." Look at how they raised their children. The Trump children were raised not to do drugs. That should tell you everything you need to know right there.
If you watch the RNC versus the DNC and the children, the Trump children and grandchildren are incredible. So, well, I want to transition to Amendment 4 because you're also a doctor, and that's the abortion. It says legalizes abortion before fetal viability or when deemed necessary for health of the mother, and it doesn't. I'm like, and that was a citizen-initiated amendment again, and because our state's been so great, DeSantis lowered it to it takes 6 weeks to. You can only get abortion up to 6 weeks, and then of course Trump stepped in it because he's like, well, 6 weeks isn't enough time, and then he walked it back. So, I love Trump, but he's made me mad a couple times, and I have no Xanax to pop when I'm mad. So,
well, and you know what? I'm gonna backtrack to Amendment 3 just for a second.
Oh,
because,
okay.
Veronica, what you just exposed right there is another fallacy. So, just because the media reports something, or just because a mailer claims something, does not make it true. So, on Amendment 3, you said you got a mailer that said, hey, we're tired of incarcerating the youth over a little bit of marijuana. That is an outright lie. Find me one jail in the state of Florida where someone's sitting there rotting away and their only crime was, well, I had a little bit of weed.
Well, and I did research that for the director of the Vote No on 3, and that is actually true. There's like nobody. The people that are in there that have done marijuana have multiple other charges. That's why they're in there for the long haul. So it is BS. Well, and that is BS.
That is, you're exactly right. That's the truth. The truth is those people were committing armed robbery. And it so happened that they had marijuana in their system, so that obviously increases the length of stay and it increases the charge. So yeah, these aren't innocent citizens that their only crime was smoking weed. I mean, again, my idols. I'm old enough to remember my rock stars. I remember when David Lee Roth was busted in Central Park, New York City, with a little bit of marijuana. He wasn't arrested; he was fined, ladies and gentlemen. And I promise you,
the hell out of him.
The laws.
Please.
The laws have not gotten stricter since 1990. I can promise you, if anything, they've gotten looser. So no one is rotting in jail because they had a doobie in their pocket. And the other thing you asked about was Amendment 4, and you wanted to know, hey, what are the lies on Amendment 4? What are the truths on Amendment 4? And we're seeing the same sort of strategy play out with Amendment 4. The other side is just putting these lies out there, and they expect you to just eat it up. Like when they say, hey, abortion is pretty much outlawed in the state of Florida. Well, that's not true. I tell you what is outlawed in the state of Florida. By having a 6-week heartbeat bill, a 6-week ban, basically what we're doing is we're saying don't use abortion as your means of birth control. That's what we're saying. Because how many people know that there are exceptions to the 6-week rule? So when they talk about the health of the mother, when they talk about cases of rape, cases of incest, when they talk about fetal chromosomal abnormalities or infants that aren't going to survive the birth, there are exceptions for each and every one of these scenarios in that bill. Those patients have up until, I believe, 16 weeks. So again, the other side, they're not exactly being honest with the debate. What they are proposing is essentially abortion on demand. And Veronica, y'all are smart enough to probably know this. What's happening behind the scenes, Planned Parenthood is telling our surrounding states, so you know where we are, we're in the southeastern United States, very conservative. If this amendment were to pass in Florida, and we're talking about Amendment 4, abortion on demand, we would become the most liberal state in regards to abortion in the entire Deep South. So Planned Parenthood is already galvanizing people from Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi. We will now become the abortion center for the entire southeastern United States, because our surrounding states would then have restrictions that are tougher than ours. So not only do they want abortion on demand for any pregnant Floridian, but they're going to start busting them in from our surrounding states. We will become the abortion capital of the southeastern United States. So that's the future that they have in store for us, and we cannot allow that to happen.
Well, it was so shocking. I was like, what? We went from 6 weeks to now this crap is on the ballot, and of course, citizens pushing it forward. So,
and it just, the amount of lies that they tell you, one of the curious things I see in there is I saw an advertisement the other day saying this should be between a woman and her doctor. And I was like, you should read the amendment. The amendment doesn't mention anything about a doctor. It mentions healthcare provider. Now, what the hell is a healthcare provider? Is it? Are you talking about a nurse? A nurse practitioner? I mean, what are you talking about? Your aunt, B, who, has some down home country advice. I mean, what exactly is a healthcare provider anymore? I mean,
and listen, for any of y'all that have ever employed a lawyer. And y'all know we have a ton of lawyers in the Florida legislature. These amendments, the language that they choose, it's not done willy-nilly. It's not like someone just wrote this thing in 10 seconds. They purposely chose vague language exactly for what you're saying right now. They want it to be vague so that provider can mean anybody under the sun. It could be your massage therapist who writes you a note saying this lady needs an abortion.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's bizarre. so well, one thing I want to ask you, you're a Catholic just like Veronica and I are, and I don't know if you saw the Pope's recent non-endorsement of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, but the moral equivalency between abortion and exporting or deporting immigrants, I was astonished at that, that we're talking fundamental of life here and saying, well, that's the same as deporting somebody because they're poor. I mean, where do you think that has any impact on this kind of voting?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, Pope Francis, God bless him, I wish him well, but I think a lot of people have kind of tuned this Pope out. I think I think people are smart enough to kind of think for themselves. A lot of people are a little more dogmatic, I believe. Pope Francis, in my opinion, he's kind of out there a little bit. He kind of pushes that envelope, and I think people just have to realize you go back to Scripture, right? You go back to your heart. You go back to what's right and what's wrong. And like I said, we simply don't want abortion to be a person's method of birth control. I mean, my goodness, you have so many other options nowadays. I mean, it's just not what we want Florida to become. We do not want to be the abortion capital of America. Certainly not the southeastern United States. So yeah, I am aware of some of those things that the Pope puts out there, and I just kind of, in good Christian fashion, I just kind of turn the other cheek, I guess.
Well, we've had we have a lot of religious leaders on here, and so a recent very political priest of mine came on, and he's just a man. He's just a man with a fancy position. But so I mean, I'm not so worried about the abortion amendment. I think Floridians are not going to support that. I think they'll vote no to change anything regarding that. Do you feel that way too?
I hope so. And, Veronica, I always like to share a couple stories, because, again, being the only doctor in the legislature, I'm able to bring something to this argument that others can't. And one of the points that I've made in the past, I don't know if y'all are aware of this. So I am the youngest of 5 children in my family. My mom and dad, they were working class, growing up and living in Mississippi. I had 4 older brothers and sisters. Now, my brothers and sisters, they were all separated by a year, so from one brother to the next sister to the next brother to the next sister, there's a span of about 1 year in between each one of those siblings. Then you get to me. I was born 7 years later than my nearest siblings. So as I get older, my Catholic family, as I get of a certain age, my mom starts joking with me and said, yeah, you were the accident. You were the kid we were not planning on. You were the kid that was unexpected. Because we already had our 4 children. You were the miracle. You were the surprise. You were the unexpected birth. And, and thank God I was born in the era I was born in, right? Because nowadays, a pregnant mother, let's say a woman in her 30s who's already had 4 kids, and now you get this unexpected positive pregnancy test. I could have been that aborted baby. I could have been the mistake that people said, nah, 4 is enough. We don't need a 5th. So I like to share that story because, again, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about, abortions and which abortions should happen and which ones shouldn't. Well, we're only able to have that argument because all of our mothers chose life. So we kind of like to provide a voice for the voiceless. And then the other example I always like to give, this is something that I really don't share with too many people, but our first child. So my wife and I, when my wife got pregnant, we were expecting a daughter, and prenatally everything was going great. You get serial ultrasounds and all the blood tests and all this and that. Right around 20 weeks, ultrasound tech whipped out the ultrasound, kind of do us a favor, get us one of those 3D pictures, And the ultrasound tech was, oh, my God, there's a problem here. They send us to what's called a perinatologist. For those of you guys that don't know, these are the doctors that are basically in charge of, like, birth defects, right? So our entire visit with the perinatologist was us sitting with this really cold, emotionless physician who basically had like a picture book of all the possible birth defects that our child could be facing. So we were sitting there, and he's just casually flipping through a photo album. Well, this could be your daughter in a few weeks. She could be born without a brain. She could be born without a jaw. She could be born without a backbone. She could be born without limbs. Her intestines could be outside her. But he's just flipping through all these horrific pictures. And the impression my wife and I got when we left that doctor visit at around 22 weeks, the impression we got was this guy more or less was trying to sway us into having an abortion. We both felt that. He didn't come out and say it, but he was basically trying to scare the living daylights out of us. And, of course, my wife and I, we're both Christian. I'm Catholic. She's now Catholic. We chose life. We said we don't care what that ultrasound shows. We don't care what the text says. We don't care about those pictures the perinatologist showed us. We are having this child. And would you guys believe that when the moment of birth came and we had our beautiful daughter, do you know what her birth defect actually was? She has a tongue tie. That was it. So can you imagine if you're a young family, if you're a 22-year-old mother and you go to that visit and you feel pressured to have an abortion? Oh, you could have all these horrible outcomes, all these horrible consequences. We have to have people making rational decisions. You cannot, as a physician, you cannot talk a parent into an abortion. That is just unconscionable. Imagine if we had aborted our daughter and there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. Again, so we have to be very careful when it comes to abortion. Abortion, I think we do not want to be the abortion capital of the United States, and I do believe that the 6-week law that we currently have in place, a law that I co-sponsored, I think it hits just the perfect spot, right? Basically, we have a reasonable ban with reasonable exceptions. So I'm quite happy with where the law is right now.
Okay. Well, I want you to get it to 0, Doc, I must say.
Yeah. I was going to say,
absolutely. I hear you, but, sometimes the center can only hold so much. I think we were very good. We were very persistent, very aggressive to get the heartbeat bill. And it's definitely a work in progress, but I'm quite happy with our results so far.
Yeah, great job.
Doc, one of the things that your story reminds me of is the power of showing people what life really is about. And we talked to a lady, I think her name was Kathy Barnett. Mm-hmm. She ran for the Senate up in Pennsylvania a while back, and her mother was 11 years old and was raped and got pregnant, and her grandparents would not let her mother get her an abortion. So she was the baby that came out of that, and she's like, even though my mother was raped, does that make my life less valuable? Exactly. And she's an accomplished woman, and those are the kind of powerful stories. And it's like, well, rape and incest, and they throw it over like it's garbage. And it's like, to me, it's not garbage. It's another human life still. And to have people like that tell their story and see this person is accomplished, imagine if you'd aborted her and she would have never done things she's done. And I think she has a daughter and stuff. And it's like, what does life mean,
Well, I think the other thing that those stories prove is just the power of positive messaging and the power of physicians to actually kind of educate and in a way kind of steer their patients. Because in my office, when we tell a lady that she's pregnant, when we show her the positive pregnancy test, sometimes we do get that shocked look on their face, but we tell them to go home and think about it. Hey, no rash decisions. Come back tomorrow and let's talk about it. And we're proud to say that we have a 100% success rate. We have a 100% pro-life rate here in my clinic. Our patients don't choose abortion, thank God. But again, think of those physicians out there that don't feel the way we feel. And to them, life is not a treasure, which, frankly, I don't know how you are a physician and not treasure life. I mean, isn't that the never-ending challenge that we're facing? Is we're trying to keep everybody
to save all
alive?
of us, Doc.
Exactly.
You all are superheroes.
How you can be a neonatologist? How you can be a perinatalogist and not value the sanctity of life is just beyond me. But again, I think those physicians.
Yeah, they're bad physicians because.
You have doctors out there that are with these gender transition garbage, cutting off body parts of children. How a doctor could ever do that is, I just can't imagine the mentality of a doctor doing that.
And again, not to build a bridge too far, but it reminds me of what happened in the COVID era, where you had doctors' offices that, hey, if you were a patient and didn't take the vaccine, they would discharge you as a patient. They would say, I'm not seeing you because you didn't do what I forced you to do. Matter of fact, to this day, there are numerous pediatricians up and down the Panhandle that will not see babies. They will not see children whose parents choose to wait and have them vaccinated at a later date. I get an untold number of new patients every single month, young children whose parents bring them to me because I'm the only doctor in the area that will give parents the choice of when their kids get vaccinated. They have been thrown out of every other pediatric practice in the Panhandle. And again, it just blows my mind that the same people who are so quote-unquote pro-choice, they're not pro-choice when it comes to vaccines. It's really quite hypocritical.
So I know you want to talk about Reaganomics 2.0, I think is what you sent me. So I wanted to, Reagan Revolution 2.0. So what did you want to share with us? Because, we all love Ronald Reagan.
Well, I think this is a great time to discuss it, right? Because apparently the Reagan movie's out. I have not seen it. my son down in South Florida, Florida Atlantic, he's been to see it. He says it's a great movie, so I'll need to check it out up here sometime. But yeah, I think this is a great time to go back and remember what made this country great. And guys, here's where we tie this whole conversation. Here's where we tie the thread. We complete the circle, because everything we've been talking about, Amendment 3, Amendment 4, when we talk about a culture of drug use, a culture of death, killing babies, I mean, this is not American culture. These are not American ideals. This is not the American dream. Again, I'm a child of the 80s. I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter, and I remember how horrible that was. I remember how we had Americans that were held captive in a foreign country, and we never knew if we were ever going to see those Americans again. I remember lining up at the gas stations in my dad's car and just not knowing if we're going to be able to afford gas this week.
Right.
And then I remember how things changed under Ronald Reagan. Now all of a sudden, the future was great. The future was so bright you had to wear shades, and everybody's looking forward to getting a job and getting their own house and getting their own vacation house and having their own children and going to college. The future was unlimited for Americans who grew up in the 1980s, and we've kind of lost that mojo. We've kind of lost that magic, and I think a lot of it has to do with the decline of our society. And again, I think Amendments 3 and 4 are just proof of that. Ronald Reagan, in the Reagan era where everything was going great, I'm sure there was drug use back then. We all know it. We all saw it. But you know what? The overarching message was, don't do drugs. Y'all remember the commercials with the egg. Here's your brain. Here's your brain on drugs. Any questions? So those are the messages that we need to put. We need to get back to feeling good, feeling great, positive messaging, positive imaging. I remember Nancy Reagan with her Just Say No campaign. I was a middle schooler when we had a poster contest. The rule was, hey, make a poster describing the evils of marijuana. And I think they were giving out cash prizes for doing that. And my poster, I was into comic books at the time, right? That's how I learned how to read. So I made a supervillain who looked like a marijuana leaf. He looked like a marijuana leaf, right? And he
you have
was
so
the
many
bad
talents,
guy,
Doc.
And he was hanging out at the local high school, and we had to lock him up and throw him in jail. So these are the positive messages that I think we need to put forth. And again, this to me, Veronica, is the common thread. You follow me on social media.
Well, I'm
still the rocker mentality. I'm still out there playing the heavy metal. But guys, it's all about being positive. We play that music because it makes us feel good. Again, my idols, they didn't walk around with their heads hung low. They didn't want to kill themselves. They surely didn't want to kill anyone else. And then when you look at our society, you wonder, is all this connected? Do we need just a good influx of rock and roll music again? And do we need more positive vibes, more optimism? Because to be honest, the music today is very depressing. When grunge hit, everything is all woe is me, and everybody's wearing flannel, and there are no rock stars anymore. And people, they don't really have idols to look up to. I mean, if you look around at your latest pop stars, I guess, when you saw what happened to Puff Daddy, right? Y'all saw he's in the news for all the wrong
Daddy.
reasons.
Apparently he's got a sex ring going on, when you're a billionaire. Oh my gosh.
Well, and you point like Taylor Swift. What are her songs all about? Failed relationships. I mean, it's
failure to marry, John. Failure to marry.
Well, I'm just one characteristic I seem to notice is we live in a society anymore, and you compare us to the 1980s and stuff. We seem to lack personal responsibility anymore. Everybody, government,
because we need a trophy, John, at every moment.
Right. Everybody needs a participation trophy. They need somebody to tell them they're great and they're wonderful when they really suck, and apparently it's bad to say that to people. But they need to hear it. They need to hear that.
If
hey,
you
you're
say
not.
It, then
not
Doc Rudman has to give him some Xanax when you tell him the truth.
well, and watch this, guys. I'm going to bring the whole conversation full circle, because we started off talking about Trump, and there's yet another assassination attempt on President Trump. This never would have happened in the 80s. I know growing up in the 80s, there weren't really I don't know about you guys. I can't remember any reports of widespread homicides. I can't remember any reports of mass shootings. In the 80s, if anything, like I said, these were feel-good times. If anything, maybe you had a classmate who was feeling down on himself. Maybe you would worry more about teen suicide, which is tragic in its own right, but we didn't worry so much about teen homicides. And, in the 1990s, as rock music faded, you started to have these other kind of counter theories floating around. There's a theory out there called celebritarianism. I don't know how much you guys know about that. Basically, it's a theory that nowadays, to our youth, it's all about popularity. It's all about being famous. Our youth, they don't understand what it means to be famous. In other words, when we grew up, someone was famous because they were a great leader, or because they were a great businessman, or because they were a wealthy philanthropist. They really had a lot going for them. Nowadays, you have people who are famous just because they're famous. They haven't done anything, like the Kardashians, like all these reality TV shows. So there's this theory out there called celebritarianism that says that our media is complicit in this, our political parties, the Democrats, the liberals are complicit in this, that they want celebrity for celebrity's sake, and it's all about clicks, it's all about likes, it's all about being famous just for the sake of being famous. And as this happens, your society erodes from within. It's literally a culture of death. And I think you see that in our music. I think you see that in our school shootings.
Well, it's more than that,
I think you see that in these assassination attempts on our former president. President Trump himself said, I heard kind of the offhand comment last night. He says, well, they're shooting at me because I'm a remarkable, it's only the remarkable presidents that get shot at. And there is some truth to that. That he's exactly right. This is what celebritarianism is all about. You have these losers who think, well, I'm going to get famous. I'm going to be the one that shoots Trump. And this is that culture of death. We have to get back to being a culture of life.
Well, and I think that's a culture of life with family, because we're missing families. There's so many broken homes. And then people don't have any God in their life at all, Doc. So
absolutely.
Let's final question for you. What are you looking forward to in this next legislature? And now Governor DeSantis is back, at the wheel, driving Florida, to getting us to where we need to go.
Well, so I've got a few surprises for you guys in the next session. I've got a re-election campaign here in November, but God willing, if the people of the 3rd District send me back to Tallahassee, we're going to hit the ground running. I've got about 14 or 15 different ideas floating around. I got to obviously whittle that down to 7 unless there's a rule change. But they're all heavy hitters, Veronica. They're all very important to people like yourself. They run the gamut from helping our farmers to helping our gun rights advocates. So the bills are just all over the spectrum, but they're all very conservative. They're all very freedom-based. We even have people in the Panhandle who are fighting over grains of sand right now, and we simply cannot allow, again, this hate culture, this culture of mine. We cannot allow people to bicker over such things. That our beautiful beaches, they belong to everyone. So you may see me stick my nose in that fight. I was a big proponent last session of the cash bill about how, if we expect other countries to honor our currency, we have to start by honoring it within our borders. We have to have businesses in Florida accept cash. So you may see that bill come back to life again this next session. But yeah, they're going to be all heavy hitters. They're going to be very important bills. And I somehow got to get down from 15 down to 7. So once I whittle that list down, I'll be glad to come back on the show.
Well, send us the list, and we'll be top secret about it, and we'll rank order them for you. With John and I work for generals. I'll keep the secret, Representative. And
we know how to keep a secret.
You would be surprised at how many leaks there are in Tallahassee.
No,
or maybe you wouldn't be
there's
surprised.
no leaks on Veronica Live. No, because we want you to come back. But next time you got to bring me some Xanax, because I'm like, what is this stuff that everybody? Literally, many years ago, I went to a birthday party. Every single mother was on it, and I'm like, I'm a military woman, so I'm like, really, it's that hard to give your child, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a bath? So I don't know, yeah. Doc. All right.
So Doc, just a quick one before we go. Is the condo problems in South Florida? Are you seeing that up here in the Panhandle?
Not so much. I think Florida is a very diverse state. What I tell people, for better or for worse, when I'm going to little small groups in the Panhandle, I say, hey, all those bills you hate, that's all because of Miami. They've got different problems going on in Miami. And I say, hey, and the bills you love, that's also because of Miami, because they're having the same problems we're having. So we all have to kind of drive the ship together. We have to understand that it's a diverse state, that, what happens in Miami actually does affect us here in Pensacola and vice versa. And it's just a matter of all sticking together. That's why it's good to have a Republican supermajority and steer the ship in the right direction. And hopefully, the people of Florida like the direction we're driving in, because I can tell you, as someone who's lived here since the late 1990s, I've never seen Florida in better shape than it is today.
Well, I love
That's
it.
true.
And we've got to have you back. And, thanks you've invited me to a few of your events, and I thought I was going to make it, but then I couldn't. So keep sending the invites, because you're one of the good guys, and we want to support you always. And, keep the fight up, because we need 3 and 4 to be no. So thanks. We've been talking to Representative Dr. Joel Rudman from District 3 over in the Panhandle. And God bless you, Doc. Keep up the good work.
Thank you guys so much, and let's make America rock again.
All right, thanks for joining Veronica Live.